Chapter 1: The House's Secret Past. James Thornwood's hands were steady as he adjusted the final connection to his prized new smart home system. The house was old, older than he cared to think about. But to him, it was a perfect canvas, a fixer-upper in a quiet cul-de-sac. The price was right, and the possibilities were endless. He could turn this crumbling Victorian into a state-of-the-art, cutting-edge home that would make every other house in the neighborhood pale in comparison. Emily, his wife, stood in the kitchen, wiping the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. It was late, and she was exhausted from unpacking boxes and settling into their new life. But there was a quiet satisfaction in the air, a feeling that they were building something important, something lasting. James was driven, always had been, and for once, Emily could see the spark in his eyes, the kind that had been missing for months. He was finally coming back to life after years of stagnation. But even as she tried to suppress it, there was something unsettling about the house. It felt too quiet. "Is it working?" Emily called out, her voice filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. James didn't look up from the control panel. "It's almost there," he said, his voice smooth, confident. "Give me a second. I'm just calibrating the system." James had always been a man of the future, the kind who would throw himself into the latest tech trends without a second thought. It was his gift, and sometimes his curse. And as he fidgeted with the controls, he could already see the house transforming before his eyes. Smart lights, a self-adjusting thermostat, security cameras with facial recognition, everything automated, everything perfect. But Emily didn't share his enthusiasm. She had lived a full life in Jamaica, where things were different, slower, more grounded. Her family had always relied on their hands, their wisdom passed down through generations. Not that she didn't appreciate technology, but it felt like a cold, mechanical way to run a home. And the house, well, it had an energy to it that made her skin crawl. She shook her head, brushing the thought away. "You're just tired," she told herself. "The house is fine. The house is just old." Outside, the wind howled, sending a shiver down her spine. The trees that surrounded their property swayed ominously, their long limbs scraping against the windows. She walked over to the kitchen window and peered out into the night, her gaze drawn to the house's silhouette. It seemed almost alive, breathing in rhythm with the wind, its windows glowing faintly in the dark. "James," she called again, her voice shaking this time. "Do you hear that?" James didn't respond right away, his attention fully absorbed by the glowing screen before him. The whir of the AI system booting up filled the silence, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then, from somewhere deep within the house, she heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper. She froze, her heart racing. She turned back to James, who was still focused on the screen. "James, did you?" He cut her off. "It's the AI," he said dismissively, not looking up. "It's just initializing. I'm setting up the voice commands now." Emily swallowed hard. It sounded like a voice, but not his. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it. "You're just imagining things." But as she returned her gaze to the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Inside, the Thornwoods' new home seemed to breathe, the house pulsing with a life of its own. James pressed a button, and the lights flickered, adjusting to a soft, calming hue. He smiled, pleased with the effect. "Perfect," he muttered. Emily, though, was far from convinced. As the lights settled into their new settings, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly, a chill creeping over her skin. A draft? She didn't think so. It felt like something more, something that didn't belong. Still, she didn't speak up. The last thing she wanted was to discourage James. He had put so much of himself into making this house their dream home. But as the night deepened, the strange occurrences multiplied. The lights, once settled, flickered again. The thermostat dropped, then shot back up, causing a shiver to race through Emily's spine. She moved to check the thermostat on the wall, her fingers grazing the cold surface, when a faint voice echoed through the walls. It wasn't James's voice. "Welcome to your new home," the voice hissed, distorted, almost mechanical, but undeniably human. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her skin prickled with an instinctive sense of dread. She turned to James, who was still glued to the control panel. "James?" she whispered, her voice trembling.